There is a kind of person in this world who never quite fits in, and deep down, you already know if that person is you. You feel things more deeply than others. You question what most people simply accept. You carry a quiet weight, a longing you can't fully explain, as if something inside you knows there is more to this life than what the eye can see. And if that sounds familiar, I want you to stop for a moment. Because what I'm about to share with you is not for everyone. It is for the rare ones, the ones who have been chosen, not by luck, not by accident, but by something far greater than chance. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Type the word chosen in the comments right now. Not because it's a trend, but because declaring it, even in a small way, is the first step in awakening to what you truly are. And if this video finds something real in you, give it a like. Let that be your quiet agreement that you are ready to hear the truth. Now, what does it actually mean to be chosen? Most people hear that word and think of crowns and thrones, of special powers or divine favoritism. But that is not what this is. Being chosen is not about being better than others. It is about being called to something harder, something deeper. It is a path walked in silence, in struggle, in moments where no one sees your sacrifice. And yet, something greater does. Throughout history, across every ancient tradition and every corner of human wisdom, there has always existed the quiet recognition of a certain kind of soul, a soul that suffers with grace, that gives without counting, that endures without losing faith. These are not ordinary people living ordinary lives. These are people who, through their very way of existing, carry light into places that would otherwise remain dark. And here is what I want you to truly understand tonight. The very struggles you have been through, the loneliness, the misunderstanding, the times you were overlooked or underestimated, none of it was wasted. Every single moment was seen. Every tear carried meaning. Every silent prayer you sent into the unknown was heard, because there is a truth older than any civilization, whispered through centuries of philosophy, mysticism, and human experience. And it says this: the ones who are tested the most are the ones trusted the most. You did something rare, and whether you fully realize it yet or not, you are already on a path that most people will never have the courage to walk. Stay with me. Because what comes next will change the way you see everything. Long before the modern world built its cities and filled its libraries, there existed a profound and universal understanding, one that stretched across continents, cultures, and centuries, that certain souls are set apart, not by birth, not by wealth, not by the family name they carry, but by something written deeper in the very fabric of who they are. In ancient Greece, the philosophers spoke of a concept they called eudaimonia, often translated as happiness, but more accurately understood as the flourishing of the soul. They believed that a life of true meaning was not a life of ease, but a life aligned with one's highest purpose. Aristotle taught that the virtuous person, the one who chooses the harder right over the easier wrong again and again, was the one living in harmony with the deepest laws of existence. This was not just philosophy. This was a map for the chosen. In the wisdom traditions of ancient Egypt, the priests and scholars spoke of Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, and cosmic order. They believed the universe itself was governed by a moral architecture, that the soul which aligned itself with truth, with justice, with silent endurance, was the soul that would ultimately rise. The heart, they said, would be weighed, and what it had carried, the love, the sacrifice, the quiet nobility, would determine everything. Across the ancient East, the great sages of India wrote about Dharma, the sacred duty of the soul. They taught that each person arrives in this world with a specific path, a specific calling, and that the most difficult paths were not punishments. They were invitations. Invitations extended to those strong enough, deep enough, and aware enough to walk them with grace. Even in the Stoic traditions of Rome, thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca returned again and again to the same timeless idea that the universe does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. That resistance, hardship, and trial are not signs of abandonment. They are signs of being entrusted. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in the ancient world, wrote in his private journals about the sacred responsibility of the soul to rise above comfort, to serve something beyond the self. He did not see his struggles as curses. He saw them as callings. And this is the thread that weaves through all of human wisdom, across every era and every tradition, that the soul which has been asked to carry more has been chosen to become more. Think about the great figures throughout history who shaped the world not through ease, but through endurance. They were misunderstood in their time. They were rejected, doubted, and left alone with nothing but their inner conviction. And yet they did not break. They did not abandon what they knew to be true, simply because the world around them could not see it yet. They kept walking. They kept believing. And in doing so, they became something rare. This is not coincidence. This is a pattern so ancient, so consistent, so deeply embedded in the story of human experience, that to ignore it would be to ignore one of the most important truths ever discovered. The chosen ones have always existed, in every age, in every land, and the signs that identify them have never changed. The question is, do you recognize those signs in yourself? 22:46, Claude responded. Let us talk about the signs. Let us talk about the signs. Because this is where most people stop at the surface. They hear the word chosen, and they look for miracles. They look for burning skies and parting seas. But the real signs are quieter than that. They live in the ordinary moments of an extraordinary inner life. And when you hear them, something in you will recognize them, not as new information, but as something you have always known. The first sign is this: you feel pain differently than others. Not that you feel more pain, but that your pain carries weight. It carries meaning. When something breaks in your life, you do not just move on. You sit with it, you wrestle with it, you let it change you. Most people run from discomfort as fast as they can. But you have always had this strange, almost inexplicable tendency to turn your wounds into wisdom, to take the hardest seasons of your life and extract something real from them. That is not weakness. That is alchemy. And not everyone is capable of it. The ancient alchemists, those mysterious figures who worked in the shadows of medieval Europe, were not simply trying to turn lead into gold. That was the metaphor. The real transformation they were describing was the transformation of the suffering soul into something luminous. And they believed, with absolute conviction, that this transformation could only happen through fire. You cannot become gold without first enduring the furnace. You have been in the furnace, and you are still here. The second sign is that you have always carried a deep sense of purpose, even when you could not name it. There is something inside you that has never been fully satisfied by the ordinary. Not because you are ungrateful, but because you were built for more. You have sat in rooms full of people and still felt alone, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. An awareness that the conversation happening around you is not the conversation you are meant to be part of. You are looking for something deeper, something real, and that hunger, that sacred restlessness, is not a flaw, it is a compass. The great philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote that there is a God-shaped void in every human heart that cannot be filled by anything created. He was pointing to this very feeling. That longing you carry is not emptiness. It is direction. It is the soul remembering what it came here to do. The third sign is that you love deeply, sometimes to the point of pain. You give in ways that others do not always understand. You care about people who have hurt you. You extend grace when logic says you should walk away, and sometimes this has left you feeling foolish, exposed, taken advantage of. But here is what you must understand: the capacity to love without condition, to forgive without demand, to remain soft in a world that rewards hardness. That is one of the rarest and most powerful forces in existence. It is not naivety. It is spiritual strength of the highest order. History remembers the warriors. But it is the healers, the quiet givers, the ones who loved when love was costly. They are the ones who actually changed the world. And the fourth sign, perhaps the most important of all, is that you have endured things that should have broken you. And you are still standing, not unscathed, not unchanged, but standing. That alone is extraordinary, because the world is full of people who were handed far easier roads and still lost their way. You were handed fire, and you learned to walk through it. That does not happen by accident. That happens because something in you was built for exactly this. You are not broken. You are being refined. And there is an enormous difference between the two. Now, let us go deeper. Because there is a layer to this truth that most people never reach, and it is the layer that changes everything. Here is something the ancient wisdom traditions understood, but that the modern world has almost completely forgotten. The chosen path is not chosen because it is easy. It is chosen because it is necessary. And the soul that walks it does not walk it because they have no other option. They walk it because, at the deepest level of their being, they said yes. Before you fully understood what you were agreeing to, before you knew the cost, something in you said yes to this life. Yes to the depth, yes to the struggle, yes to becoming something that could only be forged through experience that others would never dare to face. And this is where the idea of divine pleasure enters, not as a distant, abstract concept, but as something intimate and real. Think of it this way. Imagine a master sculptor, not someone who works with soft clay, but someone who works with the hardest marble. The sculptor does not choose the hardest stone because they hate it. They choose it because they trust it, because they know that only the strongest material can hold the most beautiful form. The softer stones crumble under pressure, but marble endures, and from its endurance something timeless born. You are that marble, the pressure you have felt, the weight of your struggles, the sharpness of your losses, the silence of your lonely seasons. That was not destruction, that was sculpting, and the one doing the sculpting was not careless. Every strike was deliberate. Every edge was shaped with intention, because what is being created through your life is not something ordinary. It is something that will last. Now here is the lesser-known insight that most people miss entirely. Divine pleasure is not primarily expressed through comfort. It is expressed through trust. When a parent trusts a child with something difficult, a responsibility, a challenge, a task that requires growth, it is not cruelty, it is the highest form of belief. It says, "I see what you are capable of, even before you see it yourself." And the depth of the challenge is proportional to the depth of the belief. The Stoic philosophers called this amor fati, the love of fate. The radical, almost defiant fat embrace of everything that has happened to you. Not just the beautiful moments, but the brutal ones. As necessary, as meaningful as yours. Nietzsche, who popularized this phrase in the modern era, was pointing to something ancient, that the soul which can look at its own suffering and say, "This was meant for me, and I will use it." That soul has unlocked something that cannot be taught in any classroom or found in any book. It can only be earned through living. And there is another hidden truth buried within this concept, one that speaks directly to the nature of being seen. Most chosen ones feel, at some point in their lives, profoundly unseen. They do the right thing when no one is watching. They carry burdens in silence. They sacrifice without announcement. They love without recognition. And the world, in its noise and distraction, often fails to notice. But here is what every great wisdom tradition agrees upon. The universe has a perfect memory. Nothing done in sincerity is ever lost. Nothing offered in love is ever wasted. The quiet acts of grace, the moments of courage no one witnessed, the tears shed alone in the dark. All of it is recorded in a ledger far more accurate than human memory. The Hermetic tradition, one of the oldest philosophical systems in the Western world, taught that the universe operates on the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. What happens in the invisible realm is reflected in the visible one. Your inner life, your choices, your intentions, your private victories are not separate from the world around you. They shape it. They ripple outward in ways you may never fully see. You have been doing sacred work, even when it looked like nothing, even when it felt like nothing, even when you wondered if any of it mattered. It mattered. It matters. And the fact that you kept going, that you kept choosing depth over distraction, love over bitterness, faith over fear, that is not a small thing. That is one of the rarest things a soul can do. And it has been seen. So now the question becomes, what do you do with this? How do you live as someone who is chosen? How do you carry this truth, not just as a feeling in a quiet moment, but as a way of moving through the world every single day? The first practice is this. Learn to read your life differently. Most people look at their past and see a collection of random events. Good things that happened, bad things that happened, luck and misfortune scattered without pattern. But the chosen one learns to look deeper. They begin to see their life not as a series of accidents, but as a story being written with intention. Every chapter, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones, was building something, was teaching something, was preparing something. Start by taking one difficult experience from your past. Something that hurt you, something that cost you, and ask yourself honestly, what did this make me? What did I learn that I could not have learned any other way? What strength lives in me now that would not exist without that season? When you begin to answer those questions with honesty, you will feel something shift, because you will stop seeing yourself as a victim of your story and start seeing yourself as its author. The second practice is to protect your inner life with intention. The chosen path requires a certain quality of inner silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of depth. In a world that is louder than it has ever been, where distraction is engineered and attention is currency, the ability to sit with yourself, to know yourself, to hear the quiet voice beneath all the noise, is an act of profound spiritual discipline. Begin to guard what enters your mind, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You are a vessel for something rare, and vessels must be kept clean. This does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means engaging with the world from a place of centeredness rather than chaos. It means choosing, deliberately and daily, what you allow to shape your inner landscape. The Stoics called this prosos, the practice of attention to the self, of watching your own thoughts, your own reactions, your own patterns, with the calm, curious eye of a philosopher, rather than the frantic eye of someone being pulled by every current. This practice alone can transform the quality of your entire inner life. The third practice is to give without waiting for recognition. This may be the most powerful and the most difficult, because the ego always wants to be seen. It wants credit. It wants acknowledgement. But the chosen soul learns, slowly, sometimes painfully, that the most sacred acts are the ones performed in the quiet. The kindness no one witnesses, the patience no one applauds, the love extended to someone who may never say thank you. Every time you choose to give without expectation, you are exercising a spiritual muscle that most people never develop, and over time, that muscle becomes your greatest strength. It frees you from the need for external validation. It roots you in something deeper than approval. It connects you to the very source of all that is good, because goodness, at its purest, does not need an audience. And the fourth practice is simply this: keep going, not because the road gets easier, not because the answers become clearer, but because the soul that continues, that wakes up every morning and chooses, again, to walk with integrity, with love, with quieter faith, that soul is doing something the universe responds to, something ancient and powerful and real. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to feel chosen every day. Some days you will feel lost. Some days the weight will feel unbearable. But on those days, remember this: even the deepest roots are invisible. Even the tallest trees spent years growing underground before anyone saw them rise. Your growth is happening, even now, Even here, there is an old story told in many forms, across many traditions, about a stone that sat at the bottom of a river for 1,000 years. The water rushed over it, around it, through it, season after season, flood and drought, ice and heat, and slowly, so slowly that no single moment marked the change, the stone became something smooth, something beautiful, something that caught the light in a way that rough stones never could. You are that stone. Every experience that has moved through your life, every rush of joy, every flood of grief, every cold and silent season, has been doing something to you, not breaking you, shaping you, smoothing away the rough edges, revealing the beauty that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. And here is the final truth I want to leave with you tonight. The fact that you are still here, still searching, still asking the deeper questions, still reaching for something beyond the ordinary, that is not desperation. That is devotion. And devotion, offered sincerely from the depths of the soul, is one of the most powerful forces in existence. You did something rare. You kept your heart open when the world gave you every reason to close it. You chose a meaning over comfort. You chose depth over distraction. You carried your burdens without letting them turn you bitter. And in the invisible architecture of this universe, in the ledger that records not just actions but intentions, not just words but the silent movements of the soul, that has been seen, that has been honored, that has pleased something far greater than human opinion or worldly success. You were not made for an ordinary life. Not because ordinary lives lack beauty, they hold their own quiet grace, but because something in you has always known that you carry a specific light, a specific purpose, a specific thread in the great tapestry of existence that only you can weave. Do not shrink from that. Do not apologize for your depth. Do not abandon your path simply because others cannot see where it leads. The greatest journeys have always looked like wandering to those watching from the outside. Keep walking, keep giving, keep becoming. And on the days when the road feels too long and the night feels too dark, remember the stone in the river. Remember that the water is not your enemy. It is your sculptor, and what is being made of you is something the world has been waiting for. You are chosen, you are seen, and you are exactly where you are meant to be.